In our journey to create a spiritual path for ourselves, something we hear most often is that we should be meditating. Meditation is generally described as probably the single most important spiritual practice that there is. Whether or not that's true, what is true is that it lies at the foundation of many spiritual techniques. After all, meditation is really about going inside and experiencing our inner being. And certainly our spiritual lives are about that aspect of ourselves. But that aspect of ourselves doesn't live in isolation. We are physical beings and physical creatures. We are active in the world, and that seems to be one of the reasons why many people find it so difficult to meditate. On this show, we've spoken a few times about meditation, and we will be speaking in detail in the near future about how to actually create a meditation practice that works for you. But what is often neglected in the study of meditation or in the instruction that we all get given that we should be meditating is that there are a variety of techniques that we need to master in order to make meditation itself easier, or at the very least possible. The whole thing is that if we are inner beings and inner creatures, if we're talking about the soul, and all of that in some sense lies within us or is in our consciousness and so on, it sounds really easy to say, okay, well then just look within or close your eyes and all of that. But because we are those active creatures where we have very practical and demanding lives in a very practical and demanding world, a lot of that is easier said than done. And we neglect to develop some of the techniques that help us make meditation more easy. But there is another aspect that is even more fundamental, and that extends to a variety of different spiritual practices. And that technique is concentration. Concentration sounds like something that you get told at school you ought to be doing, and indeed that's true. It's funny how at school they tell us to concentrate, but they don't tell us how to concentrate. And some of us might be thinking, is there a how to? Isn't it something that comes naturally or that anyone can do? Well, perhaps at some very simple level that is true, but it turns out that concentration is an art that needs to be mastered, and that once that art is mastered, it unlocks extremely powerful abilities of the human mind and of the human being. Of course, not the least of those abilities is the ability to meditate, which requires some form of concentration. But more than that, there is a lot that we can achieve by starting in the mind or using the mind alone. There are boundaries we can cross that concentration allows us to access. In many ways, concentration is a forgotten art, one that I was fortunate enough to discover in old books in my youth. So what I would like to do today is share with you some core techniques of concentration, both to help us build a meditation practice as well as to extend into other areas of our lives, from the spiritual to the everyday and to the physical. Whether you're studying something new, trying to learn something new, whether something demands a lot of attention in order to succeed, and even those things that you didn't realize demand a lot of focus in order to achieve. Learning the art of concentration can be a life-changing experience. We live in a world full of such stress and too much going on that we'll discover concentration might be just what we were looking for. Certainly, concentration ain't what it used to be, as they say. I mean, we have so much input going on that these days people seem to have difficulty in reading long things, in concentrating for a long time on, be it a movie or one ongoing thing, and the different input of Twitter and other social media and little bits and pieces and sound bites, and the competition for our attention on the internet and on television and other media means that we've all learned to listen for just a few minutes at a time before our mind wanders and goes on to the next thing. So I do hope that from today's show you'll be able to benefit both in your everyday life and in your spiritual life as you try and improve the quality of life, which requires both of those things to be improved. So what is meditation? The thing that we're going to be able to achieve by learning concentration. Essentially, meditation is the focus of the mind on one thing, whether it's mantras or spiritual things or specific things like someone might concentrate on an idea or an image. The prolonged concentration onto any one thing is not an easy job. So it sounds simple. Concentrate your mind on this thing for this length of time and you are achieving meditation. So much easier said than done. I mean, even if you achieve concentration, that doesn't automatically mean that you're going to achieve the spiritual disciplines that go with it. Much of what is required in concentration is required in everyday life. Certainly people who develop excellence, be it in the sciences or the arts or whatever they achieve in the world, seem to have the ability to single-mindedly focus on one thing. And that is what we're talking about here today. Knowing that, many of you will have tried meditation and concentration techniques, it's easy to get disheartened with meditation because it is very difficult to focus the mind on one thing. And what people often forget, is that they often say, I can't meditate because I can't still the mind, so therefore I don't meditate. And what they often forget is that stilling the mind is the goal of meditation. It's not the beginning point of meditation. It's what all that practice eventually gets you to do. The ancient sages tell us that when we can still the mind to be like a quiet flame undisturbed by the wind, then we can sit forever in a state of meditation and achieve union with the divine or the cosmos or whatever it may be. So it's important not to allow your mind to trick you and make you think that because I can't quieten the mind, I can't meditate. That's like saying, because I can't already play the piano, I'll never be able to learn the piano. You have to start with the rough practice and effort that eventually gets us to that mastery, and meditation and concentration are no different from that. So we are talking about a way of developing mindfulness. Again, learning the ability to concentrate teaches us the ability to learn mindfulness, the ability to learn meditation, such important spiritual tools in our self-development. What we know about our minds is that they seem to change all the time. They flow all the time. They move from one thing to another. They jump from one thing to another. They often seem to leave things unfinished and move all over the place. And concentration is the act of reining that in some way, calming down the flux and focusing only on one thing for as long as you like, for more than just a moment, as it just flies by moment by moment. How is that different? How does it make it a spiritual technique? Well, in the effort of concentration alone does not lead to spiritual enlightenment. And similarly, concentration won't cause you to lose your ego and abandon your negative thoughts and lose your attachment to things. Meditation will help eventually teach you those things, but we have to move from concentration to applying it in a spiritual way. And so there are a variety of worldly things which tend to distract us from developing our path and from concentration as well. not the least of which is our bodies. Our bodies really distract us. Look how I have to move around all the time. Well, when we sit in meditation, the body becomes the enemy and starts saying, scratch here, move there, just adjust your weight over there. Disciplining the body is a great way to learn the discipline of concentration, because it also deals with the fact that the body is one of our hindrances. But the main hindrance we face with almost everything is desire. I want this and I don't have that, and our mind is constantly restless, wanting something else, looking for something else, hoping for satisfaction in something else. We also have the problem of not really wanting to be disciplined. We're lazy, we'd much rather be comfortable. We seem to fall into a kind of entropy at a moment's notice. So we know from people who achieve at sport and who have other disciplines which require a lot of energy input, that discipline requires mastery of the body's tendency to want to get into a relaxed state. Also, of course, the mind itself, guilt, doubt, I can't do this, even self-criticism and negative thinking, all of these things stand in our way. And concentration allows us to develop methods to get past those thoughts. People often talk about shutting up the mind or switching off the mind, and that's not something that we can really do, but certainly we can take charge ourselves. I mean, we talk about my mind, my body, and my feelings, and my thoughts, and it's my. Who's the my that has all of this? My is this sense of consciousness. Me is this consciousness that has a body and has a mind and has feelings and has thoughts, but is not the same as those things. I somehow feel as if my consciousness is separate from those things. Well, that means that I can work at mastering those things. Body, mind, thoughts, feelings, all of those don't own me, I own them. And so, as I'm suggesting, learning concentration is the way to learn to discipline all of those things. And I'm saying it because it was really the first spiritual lesson that I learned. So let's then get straight to the nitty-gritty and talk about how to actually achieve concentration. Firstly, the main task of concentration is getting rid of all outside input. On the one hand, you can sit and learn these methods by finding a quiet place and making sure you're not disturbed and that you don't have other input going on as well. But ultimately, you need to turn your attention away from those things. In the same way that we don't stop our mind and our feelings or any of those kind of things from actually happening, it's the same with outside stimuli. They're always going to be that. They're always going to be barking dogs and cars going by and that telephone that rings just at the moment that it shouldn't. And so part of concentration is learning to focus only on the task at hand. And it's essentially the simplest part because it takes away the excuse. So we often think, I'll just wait till it gets quiet, or I couldn't do that because the so-and-so just kept on making a noise, or whatever the case may be. So task number one is training yourself to not respond to those things. It's not an exercise in itself, but it is part of what you have to learn to do. A good way to learn to do that, surprisingly enough, is to practice concentration methods in a slightly uncomfortable situation, be it too hot or too cold, some kind of aspect of the environment that's not 100% good for you. You might also want to try it in a slightly noisy environment. Rather than find the perfect environment where it's all quiet and beautiful, you're never really going to learn anything like that because you're never going to have that environment. Why don't you try and do it when the TV is playing in the next room and sit there and go through your concentration exercises, learning the discipline of not paying attention to the TV and not allowing your mind to react by saying, darn, I wish that TV wasn't on, or wish someone would switch off that TV, or something like that. So start off by disciplining yourself to not respond, and then disciplining the body to not respond. In other words, if it's cold or hot, or tired and just wants to lean over and just relax or anything like that. Get the sense of, I'm the master of my body and I'm the master of my senses, and while I'm aware of all of these things, I just simply won't react to them. And if you learn to not react to them, you will actually achieve a great sense of satisfaction, because it quickly teaches you, I am not the same as those things. I can actually choose my reactions in some way. Universe is good at cosmic jokes. Don't be surprised if something more challenging than just the temperature or the noise of the TV comes along to test that. But again, instead of feeling challenged and thinking that the world is against you and I can never learn concentration or meditation because fill in the blank, you realize, on the contrary, it is because of those things that I can learn it. It is the body that is the thing that fights back. So like I was saying, while it might start talking about it's feeling itchy or something like that, and there is that kind of challenge that says, I've just got to fix something about my body, especially itches, which are the natural thing that happens when you're concentrating or meditating, especially not responding to those indicates your sense of discipline. But what they all really relate to is that we're not in a state of complete relaxation. So it's also a good idea to make sure that you are completely muscularly relaxed. Take some slow breaths and don't allow the body to really use itself against you. So by calming yourself, by calming your breathing, by getting rid of the tension through deep relaxation, you then are in charge of a lot of the automatic movements of the body, which will just be much less at that stage. Okay, so that leads us to our very first technique. And the first technique is sitting still in a chair. Sounds easy. Sounds like everything I've been talking about so far. But sit perfectly still and see how still you can remain. Focus your attention on sitting still and begin to notice the involuntary muscle movements that you make. The itches, the twitches, the scratches, all of those kind of things. Involuntary means that you're probably only going to notice them once you've done them or halfway through them. Control them all. As involuntary as they seem, you are in charge. You might think that sitting there dying to scratch something just makes it more and more like torture, and that's only because your mind is busy saying, you've got to scratch, just scratch, once you scratch it'll be fine, just scratch and then you can carry on, this itch is killing me, maybe there's something wrong, this itch isn't going away, and the mind will keep on going all the time, and your response of, I'm not going to respond, eventually will teach your body to stop doing that, like a naughty child. But expect a lot of it at first. So exercise number 1 is sitting calmly, perfectly still and relaxed for about 10 minutes. That's going to take quite a bit of practice to achieve. You can take baby steps. You can sit in a very relaxed fashion first. Sit on a armchair or something where you can lean back. So at first you don't want to give yourself any excuses of the strain of sitting up and using those muscles. So sit in a calm, relaxed way. You could even sit in a chair that holds your head up, a bigger chair that I've got over here. And so you start off by removing any excuses. As soon as you get good at that, then sit in an upright chair and imagine that your spine is a stack of coins. And just get into the image of your spine being a stack of coins, and then you can sit there for quite some time, having learnt not to respond to that body that's itching and twitching along the way. The second exercise is one that you can take outdoors, and that is the smell exercise. You can do it by walking around a garden or just walking down the street for a while and beginning to notice the different smells of, especially of nature. You know, the smells of flowers and plants mixed together. And they're all a little bit similar, so they mix together, and it's not common for one of them to dominate that much. Then, once you've begun to notice those smells, try and find one smell in there. Try and even identify it if you know flowers, but find one smell that really takes your attention and then concentrate on that one smell. Try and make yourself only aware of that one smell, and to the exclusion of all others. You can do this exercise at home as well. You can bring in the flowers into your home. Make sure this is the time of the year to find some heavily scented flowers. You can find some jasmine and some yesterday and today and tomorrow. Other spring flowers which are coming out at this time that all seem to compete for smell. And as much as we take delight in the many smells that greet us, see if you can exclude all the others and concentrate on one alone. It's an exercise in attention, and as an exercise in attention, it becomes an exercise in concentration. Shut everything out, not only the other odors, but also the other sounds and anything else that you are aware of, until all you know is that smell. It completely overpowers you. The third exercise starts getting a little bit more difficult, but is in many ways good at keeping you on the task, so that makes it a little bit easier. All you need to do for this exercise is take a small glass, fill it up with water, hold it comfortably by the fingers, and stretch your arm out like that. I don't have the glass, but you'll have the glass. Stare at it and keep staring at that glass of water, trying not to allow your arm to move at all. There's a little bit of weight in the glass of water which makes your arm want to move, and you can see from the water whether you're moving or not. At first it might be very difficult to maintain because it is an exercise in physical strength as well, but the exercise is really in keeping perfectly still. If you find it difficult, a preliminary exercise is simply to rest your hand on a table in front of you, or on the armrest of your chair, and to stare at your fingertips and not allow them to move. They'll want to twitch involuntarily, but you'll gradually learn to keep them perfectly still just by concentrating on them. Same then goes for that glass of water. By concentrating hard, you will learn not to move. Again, you can't do this exercise in a day. You must keep this up as often as possible and allow yourself to go for weeks as you're gradually developing mental strength. I guarantee you're going to find the benefits elsewhere in your life as well. Finally, the last concentration exercise I want to give you, and perhaps the most important one, is concentrating on your internal rhythm, your heartbeat. And how you can do that is by closing your eyes or looking down a little bit and visualizing your heart and the flow of blood. And as you visualize it moving around the body and going to all the important places, try and imagine that you can hear it rushing and sloshing in the veins as it does that. And gradually you will become aware of your heartbeat. People think that you can only become aware of your heartbeat by taking your own pulse, touching your wrist or your neck or something like that. But in fact, you can become aware of it entirely by focusing within. And that's the ultimate challenge, because actually it demonstrates to you that you have so focused that you are aware of your heartbeat to the exclusion of anything else. In fact, it means that it's probably there all the time and you don't know, because we have all that tremendous input going on. The benefits of the concentration exercises are going to be enormous. My main goal is to get you to some spiritual exercises further on down the line, on and off in the weeks ahead, as we look at these various techniques. But you are going to start noticing the effects in your life immediately. And if you are studying, or if you're a young person doing matric or something like that, it's going to be enormously beneficial to your ability to learn and sit there for a long period of time, where concentrating on one thing, studying and focusing on that. Remember what I said right at the beginning, concentration is not just a spiritual discipline, it is a discipline of life. In the end, it ultimately is a form of self-mastery. It also gives you one of the greatest gifts, and that is passion. People ask about their passions all the time. So the step to passion is total concentration. Whenever you do anything, focus entirely and wholeheartedly on that to the exclusion of everything else. Never multitask. It is the most destructive behavior that you can possibly do for mind, for discipline, for focus, for concentration. Always do one thing at a time to the exclusion of all other things. That will make you passionate about that one thing. It will make you achieve much more about that one thing. It will make you feel much more satisfied, not scattered and distracted like the multitasking world makes so much of all the time. And in the end, it will benefit your spiritual life as well. So, a few easy steps to concentration which you can easily achieve. Sit still. Learn to concentrate on smell, learn to hold your arm perfectly steady, and learn to listen within. With those 4 things, you can change your life. More in the future. Be sure to watch out for the show and meditation coming soon, and I will be here next week at the usual time. See you then.